ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:05. Rachel, you can start the recording if you haven't. Rachel sent around an updated meeting agenda and minutes that include some information from the joint session with the Community Services Commission on March 15th. So hopefully folks received that. And we'll get I think, a recap from that meeting for folks who could not attend, probably either as part of the CSC report or maybe part of Rachel's miscellaneous staff reports. So let's go ahead and I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes and agenda?
This is Jeremy. I will motion to approve.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do we have a second?
This is Craig. I'll second.
Thank you, Craig. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay and raise your hand. All right. The minutes and agenda are approved. Our agenda today will cover public comments if we have any, which I don't have any. Rachel, do you have any? Okay, we don't have any public comments. We have a series of staff reports from Rachel, and then our main discussion item today will be to kind of revisit this idea of a 2022 work plan and get some input from our new commissioners. So, Rachel, you've got a long list of staff reports. Why don't we start with organized collection?
Yeah, so it's a long list, but some of these updates are pretty short. So a few items of note for organized collection. We did send out an organics newsletter today, so hopefully you all have seen that or will see that soon. Just some general information, including a class that Hennepin County Master Recycler is putting on about participating in organics. So we're sharing that with residents. I assume it's going to be like kind of an organics 101 tips and tricks kind of thing. And then some other information in the newsletter as well. We have started the process of trying to pull together an organics audit in hopefully May, which will involve us getting Richfield specific organics loads from each hauler. And then of course, sorting through them to remove contamination, calculate how much of the load is contamination, see the major contaminants, all that kind of good stuff. So we'll keep you updated. It's in very early stages, so really not much to say there. It will probably happen during, it will definitely happen during business hours, but we'll put a call out if any commissioners have never participated in an organics audit and have the availability and would like to. It's definitely an interesting time. So we'll make sure to keep you all updated on that. And then just a quick reminder that yard waste season is starting soon. I believe it is April 15th, excuse me. So just around the corner, spread the word, especially that yard waste cannot go into organics carts. I'm not super worried about that in Richfield because we do have such a strong part of the population that has already participated in yard waste collection, but we will definitely see if we see any yard waste contamination in the organics carts. And just in case anyone has this question or just to put the information out there, yes, organics and yard waste are both compostable waste streams. So you would think, why can't they be, co-collected or they in some ways they are composted together later on. But there's just a lot of different regulations around organics and yard waste, including like how they have to be stored and processed and things like that. And organics, including food waste, obviously has a few more regulations on it than your regular yard waste does. So just pass that information around if anyone is asking you if their yard waste can go into their organics. I think that's pretty much it for organized collection right now, unless anyone has any questions about anything.
Do you know where we're at in terms of percentage of households enrolled in organics?
So Roxanne is getting updated lists from all haulers because of that mailer that we're doing with Hennepin County that I sent a draft out for. But I believe she is still waiting on a list from one hauler, so I don't have the complete list yet. And actually, she's been combining the lists, so I don't even know what the two haulers who've submitted lists where they're at. So last I heard, again, we're still around 2,400, or yeah, and I would assume it's grown since we've gone through another billing cycle, but I don't know.
2,400 households?
Yeah, sorry.
What percentage is
It's
that?
pretty much 24%.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
convenient.
It's really easy because we're so close to 10,000. It's basically whatever we're at is the relevant percentage. Mhm.
Craig?
Yeah, I was just curious, is there a specific goal that we have in mind for organics collection percentage of people that are participating?
There is a goal in the solid waste goals that the commission passed, I believe it was last year. I can't remember the goal off the top of my head. I want to say maybe 30%, but I really can't remember. So I'll go ahead and pull those and just drop it in the chat for you later. But yeah, there's definitely a goal. Obviously, realistic like end goal, we want everybody to be participating, in a way that makes sense for them. But
Sure.
yeah, I don't
We
remember. off the top of
we
my
still are planning on keeping those larger dumpsters. I know there's a couple that are
Yep.
throughout the city.
Yeah, so those, they're still maintained. The sizes, of course, fluctuate as more people have participated in curbside. We have gotten smaller dumpsters, but they're still there, and we're not planning on removing them or anything. In fact, as we have more capacity in the future for outreach, we hope to specifically reach out to the multi-unit buildings in the city because they are now the core audience for that program. So.
Do you know
Thanks.
why people are not participating? I mean, is there like a list of top 3 reasons?
I mean, there's definitely common reasons. I don't know, from what other cities have asked their residents. I don't know specifically for Richfield. There's no way for us. I mean, unless we sent out a mailer and asked people to return it, I guess. But usually the common reasons, no matter what city you're in, people don't think it's worth their effort to separate the material that's already going into the trash. They don't understand how much it might save them in terms of money or space in their trash cart or things like that. Or they use their garbage disposal, or sometimes what I hear a lot from residents right now, mostly because of the charge associated with it, is that they are already backyard composting and things like that, or they already have every other week trash, and so there's no incentive for them to downsize their trash and participate in organics. Of course, we also hear that people don't want an extra cart and all sorts of things, but I really do think that the biggest reason is just that it's where recycling was in the 80s or the early 90s. It's just not the accepted thing that we all do, like recycling is for the most part. So I think it's that educational barrier.
I will say that I wouldn't be counted in your numbers just because of a couple of things you're talking about, like the backyard compost, and I don't need an extra bin for what is one of those green bags per week when I can just drive over to Wood Lake. And so I don't know how many people might fall into that category, but I know that I wouldn't be in the number that you're looking at.
Yeah, we do have a fair number of residents who I've talked to that use the drop off still, and I don't have a problem with that. Obviously the goal is to get this material that can be removed from the trash out of the trash, and if that means you don't want a cart and you want to bring it over to Wood Lake or the church or something like that, or you already do backyard and you don't eat meat, so there's nothing there's nothing to put in curbside. It really is about the system that works for each resident. But unfortunately, I think there are more people who aren't participating for other reasons than what Craig's talking about.
Has the city thought about doing a targeted mailer to households that haven't signed up yet?
Yeah, I still want to, just because of the contamination issues that we used to have, I still want to focus more on getting a solid foundation for residents who are relatively new, as in just started composting because of the city's program. And I want to get that foundation a little more solid before we kind of go out and do a mass, hey, you're not signed up, please sign up. Here's exactly what to do for this program that you don't know anything about or something like that. So, but yeah, we have talked about it for sure.
Any other questions for Rachel about organized collection or organics?
I just wanted to know, I did sign up to get 2 spots on the farmer's market for sustainability. And I chose a date in the beginning of the year, and I chose a date at the, the season, the summer market. And then I chose a date towards the end of the year. They still haven't made a decision, but just wanted to throw it out there that in terms of advocacy, I did sign up for 2 dates. That's the maximum you can do. And I thought that's enough, really, so.
Sure, yeah, we can be in touch about if that's like what the goal of organics tabling and stuff you'd like to have out there or whatever the case is.
All right. Well, Rachel, why don't you go ahead and share your report on the Partners in Energy project?
Sure. So we continue to do outreach with Woodlake Church and kind of pulling together a congregation toolkit, both to help the church with their energy efficiency efforts, as well as helping their congregants, I guess, with their energy efficiency efforts at home. So not a lot to report on that specific project yet. I think we're still trying to figure out what resources they would like. But as that comes to fruition, I'll keep you updated. We did receive more energy kits. So those things that we had at City Hall, those boxes of light bulbs, we have them in the basement of Public Works right now. We're not putting them out at City Hall again to start with, because we are also using those kits in tandem with the outreach for multi-unit buildings that I mentioned previously. So I believe that is mostly going to the property management landlords, property owners, that group. I think we might also be doing a residential mailer, but I can't remember for sure. In the property owner mailing, it references these energy kits and says if the building management is interested in procuring them for their residents, that they should contact me. So we're going to start with using those energy kits for multi-unit buildings, and then depending on how that project goes, or how many are gone from that effort, we will then do like City Hall round 2, I guess. So that's pretty much it for the energy kits. And then the last thing from PI that I wanted to share with you all is the results from the community energy survey that we put out. We did a little promotion on Facebook and in the city newsletter and things like that. And we got a few responses, not a ton, but a good amount, for showing, sorry, let me scroll up, showing some of the energy priorities and, information desires and stuff like that. So what you're looking at, the question was, what topics would you like to know more about as they relate to energy? And then we asked residents to rank them. And so the top 3, as you can see, are home renewable options, and then learning more about home use for energy and how to save. And then number 3 is actually really exciting for me, and kind of unexpected that it was going to be that high, but it's EV ownership and charging. So it was really cool to see that be in the top 3. And then of course you can read the rest, just kind of talking about different equipment and different assessments and resources like that. So this will help us kind of steer the education that we the energy event we had at Woodlake in December as well, where we had experts from CEE and PI come out and talk to residents about renewable energy options for their home and things like that. So let's see here.
What was this survey a result of? Who was surveyed?
We just put it out there for the community, and then we did some promotion in the city newsletter and Facebook and some other outlets. It was pretty much any community member who wanted to fill it out, residents, businesses, etc. So then you see the word cloud, topics that weren't in the mentioned in the list, appliances, some other things. Some of these, obviously, it's a little hard to tell what they're talking about. If it was like solar panels or some aspect of a different aspect of solar, things like that. And then, of course, it was just the rest of the questions were to kind of get a sense of when and how would residents like to attend events, virtually, in person, and then the time of day. So it'll just help us kind of, plan some of these events. So that's pretty much it. And then, yeah, it was really just cool to kind of see the rankings. So that is all I have for Pi right now.
Any questions for Rachel about that?
If you want me to include findings in the meeting minutes, can you send that to me? I won't distribute.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, what's on deck for Earth Day, Rachel?
So a few different things. So first of all, we will be bringing back the event we did exactly one time before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we had a council staff commissioner cleanup at Vets, and we're going to be bringing it back. So you all will obviously receive more details as commissioners. After staff creates a nice looking flyer. But it'll be the Thursday before Earth Day, mostly because with the modified schedule that many staff have in the city, there's a lot of staff that don't work on Fridays, or every other Friday. So stay tuned for that if you are available. It is kind of over the lunch break. So if you're working from home or you're available during the day, to come on over to Vets, staff and council and other commissioners will be there as well, just kind of cleaning it up and enjoying some. Usually we grill and things like that. So that's, like I said, is on the 21st. We'll be doing some social media stuff for Earth Day as well. Wood Lake is hosting an event that Sunday. It's kind of an Earth Day, Arbor Day combo for removing invasives, and I think also planting at least one tree. I can't exactly remember, but the details are in the rec brochure that went out to residents. So I would definitely check that out. And then one of the other ideas that we had, and I wanted to bring up to this commission and kind of gauge what you all are thinking, and hopefully it's you like the idea. Amy and I were thinking, and I believe she's talked to the Community Services Commission as well about hosting on that Saturday a joint Sustainability and Community Services Commission community cleanup. So obviously it's not just for the commissions. Anybody would be able to come, and we would help promote it to the wider community, but kind of have the two commissions act as the host commissions. CSC because they are the Parks Commission, and obviously sustainability because I don't think I need to explain why. So we were hoping that it would be something that you all might be interested in. And we would provide obviously all the stuff at a regular cleanup, the bags, gloves, grabbers, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so she was hoping, she wanted to suggest or throw out there Richfield Lake, because it's recently, if anyone's been over there, it's looking a little rough around the edges and could use a lot of help. And I don't know if it's as adopted as some of our other parks are. So that was just kind of the thought behind that. So anyway, it would not be, I could be out there too if that would be helpful, but we're kind of hoping that it would be a joint effort between the two commissions and the community at large.
Did you say that was going to be Saturday, April 23rd?
Yeah, and I don't remember if we had any time ideas, or if you all had any time ideas on if you'd prefer to do a morning one or something or early afternoon or whatever, but yeah, that's kind of where we were at with that idea.
So I have two questions. One would be, so this would be like a perfect example that in order to have a nice event, it does require people to meet and organize it, So how will that work under this open meeting law? It's literally to make sure that it's a decent event. And my second question is, it's sort of a perfect event to sort of intentionally figure out how to get a better inclusive representation in the event, as opposed to mainly white people showing up to do the cleanup, and sort of intentionally reaching out to maybe less of the, I actually don't know, but maybe the mayor can help, like churches that people of the Latino community go to, or she might have some ideas. And then, of course, the African American or the Black community. So which brings me back that in order to do this, we need to be able to meet without, maybe we can put it out there on the calendar and people can join it. So it's completely open. I'm open to suggestions. This is not meant to challenge transparency, but if we are going to have a good event, then we do need to be able to meet to organize it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was probably gone over in the commission orientation, but as Amanda alluded to, it's the quorum, so for this group, 4 commissioners can meet without breaking open meeting law, right? 3?
Right. Well, we're 7, right? Because we only technically.
Oh, it has to be less than 50. Yeah. So that is definitely a thing that can happen. And of course, if more wanted to meet, all we would have to do is notice it as a public meeting. That's not a problem. Just that requires a little more forethought because I would have to notice it. But yeah, that's not a problem.
So since April 23rd is just around the corner, are people interested in volunteering to be part of the sub-task force?
I also just don't know how much, like there is a little bit of work with the outreach, which I'm more than happy to help with. But I don't, for the cleanups that we've done in the past, there's not really a ton involved. So it'd be up to the commissions if you really wanted to kind of expand it beyond people literally just showing up and cleaning up trash.
Yeah, did you have some kind of specific task in mind, Santwana?
Actually, again, I'm a victim of lacking institutional memory. So I'm imagining, that we do actually come up with a list of things to do, like put it out the Minnesota community page, or maybe put it out on the current, and sort of, inspire the community to say there's this event. If you're interested, send in an email and say, put your name down. This is the time you need to show up. And sort of having, especially if it's going to be a community services committee also, which by definition means that the community is engaged. But if it's usually done just by the commission members, then
I wouldn't say it's done by
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, it's definitely with the idea of opening it to the community, but historically, and maybe it's just because not a lot of outreach has been done. It's not like, red, white, and blue days where people are just showing up and showing out. Like, it's a little less of a turnout for a park cleanup. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about trying to plan for, 200 people or something like that. But if you as commissioners want to run with this and make it a bigger event, it's totally up to you. We're just hoping to kind of get people out there enjoying the weather, cleaning up a park, fostering that sense of community, not just commissioners, family, friends, neighbors, random people who happen to hear about it and want to show up or live around Richfield Lake or whatever the case may be. But I also don't want people to think this has to be, a 20-hour, outreach project.
I remember when I was in high school, I'm sure I would think this is still a initiative, community service for high school students that they have to do maybe 10 hours or so. I don't know if
sure.
this would potentially be an opportunity just to throw towards the high school as something that they could tell their students that they could do for, however long, 2-3 hours, whatever it is.
It's a great idea. It's like
Yeah,
like the woodland burdock. What is it? That invasive tree burdock? Is that what it's called?
Buckthorn?
Buckthorn. Thank you. The buckthorn. They have it on their calendar, and I personally know about 10 people who have signed up for it. And they have, because it's on their calendar. It's an easy sign up, and But I love the idea of going to the high school and, getting them engaged to say, will you, so I don't know. I'll follow the lead and I'm willing to take the lead, but I don't want to do, I don't have the institutional memory of what has happened before. So
Honestly, there hasn't been an event like specifically held by the commissions for the community before. So don't worry about trying to follow precedent.
So do we have the time? Do we know the date? Do you have the?
That's what yeah, so I can't remember. Let me see in my notes from Amy. I don't know if we had settled on time or if we were looking to you all for guidance and your own opinions on that, since this is, we didn't want to set everything. It was just an idea. Hey, Richfield Lake and, Wood Lake's events on a Sunday, so why not the Saturday, those kinds of things. But I really don't know if we had thought of a time or anything.
You might consider like 2 shifts, like a morning and afternoon shift or something like that, so that people with different schedules or families with,
That's a good
kids and
point,
nap
yeah.
time routines, like, don't, if it's not like 2 hours during nap time or, just like somebody's got something going on in the morning but might be available in the afternoon. So maybe like, a 10 a.m. shift and a 3 p.m. shift or something like that,
Mhm. I did see, I pulled up an email. It looked like she threw out there 9 to 11, but I like the 2 shift idea too. If we have commissioners who are interested in being there.
And I apologize, everyone. I did jump on a couple minutes into this particular conversation. For this is the idea that there would be like a formal sign up where you would like log in, or could it just be like post to whomever might be interested, and then
Yeah, I
show
mean,
up at some time between this time and this time and this time and this time, and people will be there to guide you if you show up, type of thing.
yeah, that's a good question, Logan. I mean, honestly, we don't usually do signups for unofficial events like this. Obviously, Wood Lake and all their events they have
Right.
their own registration system going on. That being said, of course, if this does turn into something bigger, some sort of numbers are nice to know for supplies, but we've never really gotten to that point with hosting community events like this before where we've needed to kind of plan ahead to that extent. So I'm not too worried. I don't think that there's a real easy way to set up registration, considering this is not like a Wood Lake or community center event.
Yeah, and then how does it work working with the other commission? I mean, Amanda, will you be contacting them for us to, a couple of people from this commission to be in their next meeting to coordinate? How does that process work?
I don't know, Rachel. I thought that staff would be kind of doing the communication.
Okay. Rachel,
it's
how does
fine
that
either
process
way.
work?
There's not an official process. I mean, this is not like a thing where we have to follow certain things. So if it did come down to the chairs, like if Amanda and Kevin, I think Kevin's their chair, we're gonna run with it, that'd be fine. If it's easier for me and Amy to just kind of say, hey, this is what CSC talked about, okay, sustainability, this is what they talked about, that kind of thing, that's fine as well. If a commissioner who's not a chair is leading a subgroup, for example, and wants to connect with a commissioner from CSC, I believe that's fine as well. So we can kind of take that as we go forward with next steps and kind of figure out who's interested from each commission, and then we can all kind of connect as well. So I'm not worried about that. I don't think it'll be a problem.
Maybe as a follow-up item, then Rachel, you can just send an email out to us when you have more information, and if some folks want to volunteer to be involved either in communication with the CSC Commission or in some of these community outreach ideas that Santuana has talked about, you can respond to Rachel and volunteer for that.
I really do like, was it Craig's idea? I can't remember, on the high school. I think that it'd be fun to get the kids.
I think that's a good, they have an environmental
really
club
good
at
idea.
Richfield High School, so it would be a easy connection for them as a starting spot.
As high school students, you might definitely want to have an afternoon slot at 9 in the morning on a Saturday.
Good point.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's all
anything
for
else?
Earth Day.
Okay.
No.
Did you have any kind of miscellaneous items, Rachel? I know that we wanted to fill people in on the tree presentation at the CSC report, but maybe we could save that for the CSC update.
Yeah, that's fine. Honestly, I think the miscellaneous items was at first going to include Earth Day before I sent out the revised agenda. So I don't think I have anything that's miscellaneous at this time.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our discussion item. Rachel, do you have something that you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I can just share the Word document that we were kind of looking at last time. I don't have any additions from any commissioners in between meetings. So I think hopefully they're just brought up during discussion.
Sure. So as folks might recall, at our previous meeting, we talked about how the previous set of commissioners did kind of a brainstorming process toward the end of the year to come up with things that we would like to work on as a commission and things that we would like to see the city working on related to sustainability in 2022. And some of these, overlap pretty directly with Rachel's work plan and things that Rachel's already working on, and some were maybe more novel ideas. But we wanted to give folks who didn't have the opportunity to participate in the conversation, which is most of our commissioners, the opportunity to weigh in and add anything to this list of brainstormed ideas, because the existing projects are kind of what's already going on, but the brainstormed ideas, go ahead and add anything to that, or if there's just something on there that you think is really important and you want to highlight, now would be a good opportunity to kind of put forward your thoughts. So this is just kind of an opportunity for commissioners to share why you got involved a little bit in this commission and what are some of your areas of biggest interest that you would like to see the city pursuing. So I guess we'll just start with like a really quick overview and then open up the floor for discussion. So we've talked about many of these existing projects before. Obviously, there's a lot of room for education around organized waste, solid waste in general. A lot of the reports Rachel already gives, like Partners in Energy. We have these previous examples of invasive species removal at Wood Lake, and there's some plans for that to continue this year. And then there's some of these things that are new, but the planning for them is already in the works. So a pollinator garden installation at Augsburg, an idea for looking at installing a community garden next year, the tree canopy preservation policy, which is something that our commission wrote a letter of support and interest with some ideas that we submitted to council and staff last year, and that's something that Rachel's going to be working on in the future. And then, of course, the League of Women Voter Sustainability Fair that we discussed at the last meeting. And then just sort of generally, we have these existing plans, the Climate Action Plan, Solid Waste Goals, and Green Step Cities program that we're a part of, and looking how we can align goals with that. So that's kind of the ongoing stuff. And then we had this whole brainstormed list of like other things that don't necessarily fit into those buckets of ongoing work. And different ideas that came up included this idea of having like a green events team for more citywide events, community tour of residents' gardens, an example of another community cleanup opportunity, trash walking, maybe making community cleanup a more regular thing instead of like one-off events, planting a food forest at Apple Blossom Park or perhaps another underused park space, providing resources for residents related to home gardens, creating a digital booklet for residents about how to incorporate sustainability in their daily lives. So kind of like a tips and tricks for sustainability in Richfield. Tabling at the farmers market, which, you know, that, yeah, can maybe be moved up into ongoing because
Yeah.
we know that that's going to be happening. Any kind of information around the Wood Lake Nature Center, new building work, like that's something that's still in the works. Tree planting events, and we'll talk about that more, I think, during the CSC update too, but you know, there's some interest in working maybe with the CSC Commission on tree planting events in the city, Earth Day celebration, yeah, a couple other tree related topics related to like urban forest expansion and a tree sale, albedo conscious construction, kind of a policy review of city ordinance related, looking at policies that might impact sustainability in some way. No Mow May is one example because that relates pretty closely to the city's policy on grass height. Pollinator plantings, and then this idea of having like a sustainability ambassadors volunteer pool so that we can have a team of interested residents that we can, you know, kind of make calls out to whenever we have events that we would like some extra hands to help out with. So let's go ahead and open it up if folks have things that they want to add to this brainstorm list or just things that you would like to call out.
I'll have one that I can add here. So we have, I mean, I don't know, like 6 or 8 rain barrels on our property, and I've always thought that it'd be interesting to do a rain barrel making type of a class or some way to provide some resources for people to install rain barrels, because it's really just a couple pieces of hardware to understand how they work and what the gray water can be used for. And I have a friend of mine whose dad in Wisconsin, part of a program where if they have rain barrels, that there's like a modest credit on their water bill for the sewage piece of it. Not sure if that's something that we could do or not, but having sort of a, even if it's a nominal, some type of incentive, you know, if you put this into place, you get a modest credit on your bill, I think might incentivize people to do it. I don't know, but I think that I'm big into the education piece. I think when you guys hear me talk, I'll usually be talking about how to educate people on things, and I think rain barrels are just an easy thing to do that hits home for a lot of people.
I'd take the class.
And then the community tour one too. I think I like the idea of that for the, what was it, gardens? But there's a whole bunch of other things that could fall into that under sustainability for people that do different things at their homes, like rain barrels, or if they're doing anything with solar or composting. We haven't done it before, but there is a coop tour. So for chicken coops and for duck coops, there's kind of like that parade of homes that's mentioned on there for people that have chicken coops or duck coops, and go see how those are set up. So I think there's a lot of things that you could bake into that idea of having a tour of people's homes.
I've been on the chicken tour and it's delightful.
Have you? Yeah, we haven't done it yet, but I think it'd be pretty cool to see.
I like the idea of a sustainability tour.
Is that the?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just thinking. There is a garage sale weekend in Ridgefield, right? I was kind of wondering if that's something could be coordinated with, you know, maybe not so much garden, but like the coop tours and those kind of things. So you already have people moving around town, you know, going to different garage sales. I don't know, just a thought popped into my head. You know, you already have a citywide event, something that could be attached to that. Just a thought.
I think that's a great idea. And I think if we had like options, like we could have all the houses that have coops and all the houses that have rain barrels and all the houses that have, you know, composting. So people who are interested in whatever can sort of pick from a cafeteria, and as they're wandering around for the garage sale, they can go to the different, you know, houses and say, I want to check this out to see if it's something that I would be interested in doing. That, you know, since they're all out and about anyway.
Yeah, I think Adam brings up a good point about the garage sale. And I have no idea, but I would imagine that that's when, after the garage sale weekend's over, a lot of people's garbage cans are full of things that they didn't sell. And I wonder if that's an opportunity to talk to people about, or not organics, but like recycling, or if there's something we could do with donations for things that have value but didn't sell that they're going to throw away. Leveraging that, since everyone has their stuff outside, it's probably going to end up a lot of it in a garbage can if it's not sold.
Yeah, and I think I know we are still, so this is just a suggestion because I know the food waste is still consuming, and it should. It's a huge part of sustainability. But expanding the program of recycling, so whatever the recyclings don't take, so sort of maybe even having it on the city's website. So option for what can people do if they want to recycle shoes, if they want to recycle, toothpaste tubes, or stuff that's left over from the garage sale, because there are these sites that take them, but people are not unaware of it. People are not aware of it. I'm sorry. But there really are lots and lots of different organizations now that take different kinds of materials that end up in our garbage when they actually could be recycled.
I was just saying, I think it goes back a little bit to what Craig mentioned, all the way back to the rain barrels. Is one of the things that is admittedly most of interest to me is where some of these activities and things that we can be doing in the community marry up with both policy as set by the city, but then education with for the residents about the certain advantages and kind of the incentives and like what's in it for them to be a part of this. And I think some of this goes back to some of the stuff with the partners in energy a little bit, but the idea that, hey, you can come to this, how to make or install this, rain barrel, and it does all this good stuff. And there's a potential rebate, not saying that's available here, but then it's the aspect of helping people understand that there's a financial incentive for them as well, in addition to the, sustainability aspect of it, but then also trying to, whether it be write papers or advise city council on ideas on like, hey, this could be a policy that is worth considering, and here's why the advantages to it, and here's what we could get. Because I think we're here generally, I think mostly because we're intrinsically motivated by this, because we think it's important, we want to be here. But there's a lot of people who care in theory, but when they see that there is financial advantage to them or other advantage to them to participating in these things or being involved or doing some of this, they'll be much more likely to engage. And where we can educate and influence in order to bring all those things together is, I think, a nice sweet spot to try to operate in.
Yeah, the moment is right. A lot of people want to do stuff, they just don't even know how to get started. So I think if we could sort of be a place that gathers that information and says it's right here in your neighborhood. So, if you want to start a native garden, or if you want to build a rain barrel, or if you want to find out how easy it is to compost in your own backyard, here is a list of resources that is literally in your own community that you can reach out to. So, other thing, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And that was my idea for the digital booklet for residents, is to have this sort of an onboarding process, so to say, for being sustainable. And I think these ideas are fantastic, but to have them organized in one spot and be able to be easily accessible, whatever that may look like, maybe it's just an online sort of flip book that they could do, or something that could be even download a PDF, an interactive PDF of some sort. But I think all of this information could go into this digital booklet aspect. And then when we do promotion or tabling at the farmers market, we have one site or one sort of reference that we can refer back to for residents to go, and it would be like a one-stop shop for them to, you know, anything that they think of sustainability. So like, where could I recycle, you know, this odd and end thing, or what could I do with this? They could go there and get some references or resources and kind of start that sort of process there. So I love all of these ideas, but I agree. I think they should be organized in an easy, sort of accessible sort of resource for our residents that we can advocate for and promote.
So do you think, I mean, I mean, we all know people with different skills. I mean, would this process work that we send an email with our resources to, I don't know, if it should be Amanda or Rachel? I'm again still struggling with the open meeting thing, because this is, again, you know, it's organizing, to get this material organized, so then we can sort of, you know, categorize them, and then whoever has the skills in making a, you know, fun digital booklet can make it, and then it can be put on the Richfield website and kept being updated as we get more information. But there are some really cool things that people in Richfield are doing.
And I think we can highlight that in the booklet too, have volunteers to do videos, maybe how to make a rain barrel, and have that
Right.
as part of the digital booklet instead of maybe having classes necessarily, but you could have classes and the sort of video showing, you know, how to make that on their own, and what resources, what sort of tools and equipment they would need to do, and the benefits of that sort of thing. I think that would be very cool. I would definitely watch
Right.
something like that as a resident, and to get more information on that, and to do it myself.
Even the food waste, like I know that there are 3 families in Richfield that have the little farm stand. Like you have the, you know, the little lending libraries, they have a farm stand in front of their own house. And so it might have like 8 tomatoes, you know, some beans, herbs. And so whoever is in that block, they can just go by and pick up what they need. But at least the food doesn't go to waste. You know, the excess stuff doesn't go to waste. So I mean, people are doing some very cool things in Richfield. So, and, you know, so are we agreed on this? There seems to be consensus on developing this.
It does sound like a project that many commissioners are interested in pulling together.
Okay, all right. If I could just change the subject a little bit. When I read the current, I just see almost in every sort of, what do you call it, edition, or every version of it, there's planning going on for building multi-storied housing. So they just got approval to start building affordable housing on 66th and Portland. They have some excess land left over when they were doing the roundabout. So one of the things I think that this commission could look into, again, this is just a suggestion, is when the developers submit their plans, there's a set of requirements for making that place more sustainable in terms of either, and I'm throwing suggestions out that I don't know what I'm talking about, but just in terms of plantings or green roofs or solar or, you know, green space. So there's just some basic things that the city of Richfield is saying that if you're going to submit plans, these are some of the things that need to be included in your building plans to reduce the heat map from multi-storied housing. So it's not only good for the climate, it actually creates a nicer space for the people who are living in it. So that was one of my suggestions, that as I was looking at the list, is to influence the planning commission that don't just give away the land and have these developers come in and pay no attention to the environment, when just a small amount of tweak could really make a huge difference. You know, rainwater, storm water, it's not gushing out, just basic principles that they need to take into account as they submit their building plans.
So we already do some of that in the staff review process. Unfortunately, a lot of it, unless it is city code, we cannot require solar. We cannot require green roofs. We cannot require, whatever the rain barrel equivalent for a multi-story building would be. There are landscaping requirements in zoning, planning and zoning code that talk about, like how to calculate the number of trees required and the number or the amount of green space, which is either grass, shrubs, shade or ornamental trees and things like that. And then depending on the development and all the different variables, whether it's a planned unit development or receiving other city funding or whatever the case may be, it goes through multiple internal processes that it's not even necessarily the commission, where staff kind of go back and forth with the developer. We just had a meeting today about a development where I recommended looking into rooftop solar. And now we obviously have the new EV charger ordinance in the city as well. And so it's kind of like a mix of when those things come up, whether it's the commission or whether it's staff, or the public meetings that developments have or things like that.
I don't want to keep going too far down the rabbit hole, but I'm just curious in terms of what we can require. Can we require LEED standards at all for architecture? Are we able to do anything like that or not?
No.
Okay.
I think, and this might be, this is definitely me speaking without 100% knowledge, but when city financing comes into play or there are other involvements that the city is in with like TIF financing and other things like that, then there is more back and forth with what the city is asking or requesting a developer to do, or requiring in certain cases in order to get city financing and things like that. But yeah, no. The one thing, and this is not for private development, but like we talk about with the potential new Wood Lake building and everything like that, is that money that's built with like state money has to be built to SB 2030 standards, which obviously it's not LEED specific, but it's an equivalent. So there's different stuff, but when it comes to commercial development, it's a whole nother world.
I'm sure. Okay, thank you.
So Rachel, I'm wondering if there's an aspect of Santuana's idea that could be added to the brainstorm list, like maybe something about partnership with the Planning Commission, or is there any sort of influence that we could have related to construction and zoning?
I just don't think codes are written in stone, and it's just.
Sometimes it feels like it.
I know, I hear you. But you see some of this new development and it's like people are going to live here. Surely with just a little bit more thought, you could make it a much more pleasant place.
Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong. Unfortunately, it comes down to it's a whole big mix, when we're talking about things like affordable housing, and then of course the developer's cost of housing, and our priorities might not be the same as theirs, and so I think that there probably is an opportunity for partnership here with the commission. I would definitely have to talk to community development staff because I don't think the sustainability has ever really had a connection with the planning commission before. The Sustainability Commission, to be clear. So that would just be a further conversation where we'd have to figure out, is it a liaison situation or is it, yeah. So I can look into that.
I was just curious if the Planning Commission had any liaisons like we have with Jenna.
That's a good question.
So I know it's sort of like the biggest and most controversial commission. I don't know if there's a limitation to how many liaisons they can have.
Yeah, let me look into that over the next few weeks and I'll come back with answers.
Great.
I obviously don't know how to do a meeting online. I've tried to. I don't know how to unmute myself until just recently, but this is actually a topic that I wanted to bring up as well. When I read, the climate, and you see the climate report, and you see how Richfield is so much hotter than everybody else is. But you think about, we're now entrusting homeowners, and it seems like we're putting not all, a lot of the onus of all the sustainability stuff on the single family homeowners rather than the community as a whole. And, I do the same thing. I look at buildings. I actually used to be a property manager, so I look at that stuff all the time. And when you look at the buildings and there's like 2 feet of green space, next to the street, it's like, well, no wonder we're so hot. I mean, it seems like there needs to be some sort of start of a shift, to the future development, especially with all the stuff that we're trying to do in the city with, meeting the housing goals and things like that, that there has to be some sort of, give and take, I guess, on what we can ask, for them to do, even if we start with baby steps of whatever it may be. I mean, I know that they have to put in trees, but the trees are typically 2-inch, caliper, and how long is it going to take it to really be a tree? So I mean, I think this would be a worthy thing to go into, at least for the future.
Even the
it will take a
lawn,
long time.
even the 4 feet of lawn that's there, it's heavily fertilized. If children play on it, God knows what's in there. There's nothing in that lawn that looks as if it's being maintained without a lot of chemicals being used. And they don't even do food waste. It's like they're immune. It's like they have this immunity from.
Well, there's a certain amount of that I do understand, because when you're talking about removing that much waste, from, you wouldn't, it's unreal how much money those complexes spend in garbage removal, and to keep it clean and keep, things like that with residents and not putting it in bags and stuff, the whole building, you're going to have odor problems. So, I mean, I do understand a certain amount of that part of it, but I think if there was a way to, encourage some sort of, either the solar panels or capturing rain, reusing rainwater, not just throwing it out on the streets. I mean, I do like what the new complex did over off of south of Target, when they did the curb cuts, into the medians, for some of that rainwater capture. But I think they just, I think that they could take minimal, over the whole scope of the whole project, we could try to encourage the city to, start thinking about the future, and not just, not in combination with meeting the housing needs, we also meet the needs of the climate.
Yeah, I that resonates with me, and I understand that, right, we're not in a position, we're not rewriting code here, we're not, changing policy, but I do think there's, in a perfect world at least, would love the vision of, as a commission, us having a public point of view on some of these things that we're willing to share with the planning commission, with city council, and when these developments are being built, here are some of the things that we ask to be considered and keep in mind, and try to push and influence that way, even if it's not embedded into code or policy. It can at least start conversations and push the city as a whole in some of these areas, rather than just relying on single family homeowners or whatever to do this, and this, and this to be sustainable for themselves, which is a big part of what we should be doing as well.
Lots of good conversation around this topic, lots of energy around it, even if it is kind of a big sticky topic. So always good to
Again, I completely agree. It's baby steps. We're not going to change the world in a day, and I don't even know if we are qualified to do it. But just to even have the voices heard in these meetings to say, can you please, pay attention?
Are there other ideas that folks wanted to add to this list?
No more me.
It's on there.
Is that an option at all this year?
So, okay, since it's been brought up, we had a meeting, I think it was earlier this week, with public safety, and at, NOMO May, as it like literally is not an option itself. However, we have come up with something else. And before I explain what we would like to do, I do want to talk about why NOMO May is, quote, not an option. So first of all, there's been, even before COVID, hesitance around NOMO May because we have seen and actually other cities in the metro who have gone through it, and then residents literally do not cut their grass for the entire month and then cannot cut their grass at all. And which of course then if they can't cut it, they have to hire a lawn service, and it's actually in some metro cities become quite an issue. And for that reason, public safety is very hesitant to do anything around NOMO May. So we had conversations about, what are other options? Could it be education around like less mow May or something of the equivalent? Like maybe it's like don't not mow your grass to a point where you cannot mow it, but mow every other week, or make sure you're taking advantage of the 6-inch like height, grass height limit, because many residents cut below that and stuff like that. At this time, with our limited public safety capacity and the amount of reports that residents make about grass height, or like code enforcement complaints, I guess, that they make about other residents' grass height, we didn't, there's no appetite for us to kind of put something out there regarding grass height. So what Amy and I are trying to do, well, we are going to do this, but what we're going to do for May instead is focus on, instead of like the no, the negative, the don't do this, we're going to do more pollinator focused education in terms of plants and grasses. So a few things around that. Obviously you can, one strategy is to mow your grass down like really low, like an inch, and then overseed with clover and other, pollinator friendly plants and things like that. Another thing is obviously just planting pollinator friendly plants in general. So we're gonna do a campaign focused around that this year, and then hopefully if public safety can add staffing capacity, because they are down quite a few CSOs, and obviously that's what enforcement is done by the CSOs, and they're really focused more on hoarding issues actually. So the grass height, and then there are more pressing public safety issues right now. So hoping to return to the grass conversation in the future. If this is something that the commission feels strongly about, I definitely encourage us to continue this conversation and figure out if it's a recommendation to council like we did with the tree policy or whatever that would mean. But for this year, it's going to be a pollinator focused educational campaign, similar to highlighting other existing native gardens and everything that we've talked about previously with Richfield residents too. So that's where NOMO May is.
Is it possible for us to start a guerrilla campaign to do a NOMO May and just let the chips fall where they may, or can we take that as a position?
I mean, this is a recorded meeting, so I would not advise. As staff, I can say I would not advise a guerrilla campaign.
No, I mean, go
ahead, Adam.
Well, I totally understand the issue of you let it go and then it becomes difficult at the end, and there's always a little bit of give and take there, but I don't know.
I understand where you're coming from. I think an important thing is if residents are wanting to do something like this, there are ways to increase the amount of pollinator habitat in your yard and to maximize grass height and things like that don't violate code. So I'm not worried, because I feel like if there are residents who want to do this, they will use their brains and figure out how to do this in a way that obviously doesn't violate code and cause code enforcement come out and all that stuff. That being said, it's not going to be a huge widespread, don't mow your grass kind of thing. It's going to be like, hey, here's the habitat that we're trying to foster. And here are ways to do that fall more in line with
Yeah.
If I can just,
So
I was part of the guerrilla campaign last year to not mow my lawn in May. And I was following the lead guerrilla who will go nameless in doing this. And my grass grew and grew, and I myself became quite alarmed. So I called the lead and I said, I don't know if I can get through this. I think I need to mow my grass. And this person says, oh yeah, I already mowed mine.
That's the thing. I think it's not no mow in general, because even if public safety had all the capacity and we're able to stay on top of code enforcement, I particularly am a little hesitant about like, don't mow your grass for an entire month. But I do think, and there are studies that support this, that every other week mowing, keeping an eye on the length, like there's ways to get to the end goal of no mow May, which is obviously increasing pollinator habitat. I'm not worried. I know that residents are able to think and do things like this on their own without, making it a nuisance. So,
I'm gonna.
Rachel, I just want to say that I think the twist that you are taking to say that we're going to focus on simply having a different kind of lawn, mow it down and reseed it. I do think that in a long-term sustainability kind of vision, I do think that's the way to go. It's to say that
it's one option. So
get to a lawn that doesn't need mowing. Slowly transfer your yard into a lawn that actually doesn't need to be mowed. Or maybe needs to be mowed once every 6 months because of the kind of overseeding that you are doing. I do think that's and for the longer term, that's a better approach. My 2 cents worth.
So I think this is obviously an important topic for folks, and perhaps one that we can explore in greater detail at the April meeting, since it is so timely. But yes, generally, I mean, I think Rachel's point is well made, that it's not necessarily the most important thing for pollinators to like have, your Kentucky monoculture of Kentucky bluegrass like being 8 inches tall and full of ticks. It's like perhaps more important to be messaging right now that folks should leave their leafy areas, undisturbed for as long as they can, and tips for how to kind of like preserve some of those spaces that pollinators may be sleeping over the winter, because there's overwintering creatures right now, and so it's not just about May, right? It's not just about grass. So, thinking, about how people can help with pollinators in their yard sounds like a good topic for further discussion in April. But I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to add any other ideas to this list, so we can kind of make sure we're fleshing out our higher level work plan for the year. Are there any other ideas that folks want to add or call special attention to? All right, well, this was some great conversation. Thank you all for contributing to it. There's a lot of energy in this group. And what I might suggest is, just kind of as a reminder, like this work plan idea, it's a menu of options and ideas. And we have to remember that, Richfield has limited staff capacity to be able to execute a lot of this. It's mostly Rachel. She has some partners in like the communications department and Roxanne, to kind of help with things, but we have limited staff capacity. And so what I might recommend for folks is like, think about this list and think about like, is there something that you really want to be the champion for? Is there a topic like, this digital booklet idea? It sounded like there was a lot of energy around that. So it's like maybe sort of like pick one or two of these topics that really speaks to you, and kind of like mentally assign yourself to it, you know. And as the year progresses, you know, keep in mind that we can discuss these things on our agendas. I would encourage you, if you have a specific discussion that you want to have around an item, or you want to create some energy around an educational event, or you know, a communication piece, or you have an idea for a letter that we could submit to council with a recommendation. Those are real actions that we can take as commissioners. And so, you know, a lot of these things end up being driven by someone who's interested, like the invasive species pulse that one of our former commissioners, Brian, really kind of sparked that and led it. So, you know, I would ask Rachel if, you know, once you clean up those notes, if you want to send that around to folks so that we can kind of keep it and keep it in our back pocket, and then have folks just like keep that in mind. And if you have an idea for an agenda item, send it to me and Rachel, and it's something that we can discuss. And not all of these ideas may be actionable immediately, but you know, if there's enough energy around it, then maybe we can, you know, try to pick these apart and have someone sort of like be the champion for different ideas, and then you can just make sure that it keeps on the radar as the year progresses. So. Any thoughts from you, Rachel, on the work plan?
No, just co-signing all of that. With things like the digital booklet, if there are projects that could potentially be spearheaded by commissioners more easily, I definitely encourage you to reach out to me if for instance, one of you does want to start a subcommittee working on that, or has ideas that you just want to kind of say, hey, here's all my ideas for when this does get moving or something like that. I'm always willing to kind of, you know, take everything and kind of figure out next steps, especially because we don't have a group email thread or anything like that. But yeah, for some of those things, I mean, honestly, some of that we already have started on the sustainability webpage. So, or the web pages or other stuff on the website. But honestly, a project like that is going to be something that if it does come to fruition, it's going to be because of you as commissioners, because I don't have the capacity to make a digital booklet. As great as of an idea as it is right now. So just keep that in mind. I'll check in with the planning commission, and I can do a lot of this internal stuff. But for some of those ideas, it's really going to be on you all if you want to get them actualized to some extent. So, of course, always here to support, always here to do the communications, always here to put stuff on the website, compile, do whatever we need to, and you know, tap my resources as well. But like Amanda said, I only have so much time, so.
Great. So that's your homework assignment. Rachel will send around the list, and you assign yourself a pet project and say, this is my thing.
And once if you do, sorry, Amanda, if you do identify something that you want to work on, but you want to know if other people are also interested, you don't just want to, like, you know, dive off into the dark waters alone. Just that's the thing where you can totally reach out to me, Amanda, say, hey, I'm interested in working on this, and then we can put the call out, you know, Adam's interested in this, is anybody else willing to, you know, co-plan or whatever. So just keep it in mind, like, we are all a group here together to work together. So that's it.
Thank you. I'll draft the minutes and send them out to you tomorrow. I actually work nights and I have another meeting starting up, so I do need to leave. Is this a good time to leave?
Yeah, that's fine. This will be recorded anyway, so you can catch any bits that you missed, which I think at this point is probably just the CSV update.
Yeah, and you were at that tree meeting, Sanjuana.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yep.
Thank you
for joining us tonight, Sanjuana.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
So we don't have any action items, but we do have just our Community Services Commission update. So Jenna's not here. Rachel, if you want to share that update, and then maybe some of your reflections from the joint meeting, and I can maybe fill in some of the blanks too.
Yeah. Yep, I'll give Jenna's really quick. It's just a super short list. It's maple syrup making season at Wood Lake. I'm literally just going to read the email, so please don't ask me for clarification. Egg hunt will be taking place again for the first time in several years at Veterans Park, April 16th, 11 to 1. Seasonal hiring underway for numerous positions, lifeguards, playground leaders, and I think there's some more. That was me. Senior dining has started again at the community center. There's the option to eat there or bring the meals home. The Roundup program at the liquor stores for April, May, and June is going to go towards toys and activities and other like small infrastructure pieces at the dog park. I think specifically, if I'm remembering a conversation correctly, they were talking about like concrete tunnels or something. So that might be wrong, but that's everything from Jenna.
What did you say was happening at Veterans? I didn't catch that.
Sorry, egg hunt.
Oh,
Like
egg
Easter
hunt,
eggs.
like
Easter eggs. Yeah. So that's everything from Jenna. I can go into the tree stuff now too. Let's see here. So I did send out the PowerPoint to all of you, and in the PowerPoint, if you haven't looked at it yet, in like the notes section, it has the notes that I took during Chris's presentation. So it's a pretty good replica if you weren't able to make it to the meeting itself. But briefly, Chris talked about the services that forestry provides with inspections and tree maintenance. And obviously like tree removal on public property. And then of course, injections, replacement planting, storm cleanup as it happens, things like that. One of the things, and you've obviously heard this a lot about capacity, is that the guys that do the tree work are also the guys who do snow removal. They're also the guys, like we have people in the department that, do a bunch of different things. So when we have snow events, the tree work is delayed. Tree work, a lot of it happens in the winter. So it's just trying to paint a broader picture of what we're working with in public works when it comes to staff capacity and why certain people might have questions about when a tree is going to get removed or why their tree hasn't been inspected or X, Y, or Z. After he talked about the responsibilities of the department, he talked about kind of our canopy status and tree planting status in Richfield. And a lot about our work with Tree Trust. We've done a lot of events with them in the past few years, especially at our parks. We also received a DNR grant this year, specifically related to EAB. It's about $100,000. So that will help for 2 years of replacement. And let's see, just glossing over some of the rest of it, we had a fairly in-depth conversation about the species list, both the expansion over the past 14 years or so, as well as some species that have been removed and others that can be removed in the future as well, based on invasive status and things like that, which I think Amanda can talk more about if we want to. Chris did a little comparison of the Dutch elm prevalence in Richfield versus the EAB prevalence in Richfield, and the history of that. And then a lot of questions from commissioners about where does the city receive trees, outreach about EAB, who can get a boulevard tree, other diseases that aren't EAB, preventative treatment on oaks, things like that. So basically, I just encourage you all to go back and read the PowerPoint if you weren't there.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on to Rachel's notes. So it was a good presentation, and I'll say that I had a follow-up conversation with Chris afterwards to kind of fill in some of the details. But some high-level messages that I wanted to relay to commissioners about the forestry work that the city is doing is, as Rachel mentioned, like Richfield's a small city, so it has a very small forestry department and limited capacity to be able to do everything that it wants to do. So that's sort of the caveat of all of this is we recognize that there's some limitations, But at the same time, you know, what I heard was some genuine interest from the city in trying to do the best that it can within the limited capacity that we have. And, you know, some of the things that Chris talked about and that I spoke with him about, you know, with some interest around this idea of native trees, you know, and I think that there's definitely interest in, you know, some of the things that they said were most important are like diversity in the canopy. So really trying to not repeat the problems of history with having too many elm, followed by too many ash, followed by too many maple.
Maple.
Yeah, you know, so diversity, I think, in species is a #1 goal. Climate adaptation is a goal of the city, trying to think about what will be able to thrive here in a warming climate. You know, and I think trying to expand tree canopy along the boulevards seemed to be a goal. So trying to like work with residents and maybe work through residents, whether, you know, they're interested or not. The boulevards are owned by the city. So it sounded like there'd be more of an effort to try to fill some of those empty spaces along boulevards and get as many trees as possible planted. So you know, in terms of some of the species, it did sound like there was interest in thinking about native trees. A lot of the species on the list are cultivars, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, cultivars of native species in a landscape setting sometimes make a lot of sense from a forestry perspective because they're more resilient to some of the pressures that a tree sort of city street encounters. So I would say like don't worry so much about cultivars, but what we did talk about was like, can those cultivars be of native species instead of maybe crosses with European varieties or, you know, just pure European varieties that could potentially be invasive. And he said he seemed open to that. And he said the biggest limitation was really around what nurseries had in stock and whether or not it was going to be affordable for the city. But you know, I think there are some resources out there that maybe the city wasn't aware of that do grow native trees. So like Outback Nursery was something we talked about, which is someplace
He
that
showed
the
that to me, Amanda. I think he was very excited to learn
yeah
about that and have that conversation with you. We talked about that afterwards too.
yeah that's great. So I think the biggest message I guess I want to relay for commissioners is like, you know, Chris and the city are open to feedback. They recognize the limitations of the resources that they have because they're such a small department with a variety of different tasks. And so I think, you know, there is some opportunity for commissioners to weigh in and provide some welcome advice to the city related to some of these tree issues. And he did talk about a potential, you know, education, community kind of event where maybe we could do like a joint tree planting with the CSC commission in a place where, you know, Richfield might lose a lot of ash trees in one of the parks, you know, and we can talk about like, well, can we do a diverse tree planting to replace that? That's, you know, really thinking about meeting the city's goals of like diversity and climate adaptation and, you know, providing replacement carbon for what's going to be lost. And so I think there's going to be some opportunities coming up this year for us to be involved in that. And I just wanted to put that on people's radars.
One other thing that actually happened after the presentation or since the presentation is we started doing a lot more staff planning about the EAB outreach and I mean, more just education, I guess, both in regards to private EAB infested trees as well as specifically what will be happening or the removal that will be happening in Donaldson. So we are pulling together social media posts, newspaper stuff, on the ground kind of outreach at Donaldson, as well as, you know, other things. I believe we're going to be doing one of the moment with the mayor videos and just doing things like that. So if you have any ideas, feel free to send them over, but just know that in the next definitely few months, we'll be getting a lot more EAB information out there.
Great. Any questions or comments from folks? Great. Well, our next meeting will be back at City Hall in the Heredia room, Thursday, April 28th at 7 p.m. So we will see you there in person. Are there any final comments, questions, or updates that folks wanted to share before we call for adjournment? Right. Well, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Craig here, motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from Craig. Do we have a second?
Amy seconds.
Seconded by Amy. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Great. The meeting is adjourned at 8:30. Thanks, everybody.